Welcome to Cross-Border Tax Talks, where we discuss the latest trends in international taxation, from U.S. tax reform to the best tax practices for a global organization. I'm Doug McHoney, PwC's U.S. International Tax Services Leader. You can find me on Twitter at XBorderTax. On this week's episode of Cross-Border Tax Talks, we're in Orlando, Florida, at our Tax Leadership Conference, where I'm honored to be joined by Roy Weathers. Roy is a PwC Vice Chair and the firm's U.S. Tax Leader. Previously, his roles included New York Metro Tax Leader and was a practicing tax partner in banking, capital markets, and insurance sectors. Roy, welcome to the Cross-Border Tax Talks podcast.
Great to be here. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite. I was wondering when I was going to get a chance to come spend some time with you.
Well, I'm very excited. And I also like to remind people that, at one point you were, before you were leading our tax practice, you did client work, you worked in our financial services industry.
Absolutely. You'll have to bring me on sometime to test my technical tax knowledge even today. I still like to keep up on it as much as possible. And obviously, I spend more time with clients and understanding their issues and challenges and the firm. We have a big practice.
And that's exactly what I'd like to discuss today. So one of the things that we've spent obviously a lot of time talking about on this particular podcast is U.S. tax reform.
Yes.
And not just U.S. tax reform, the changes that are taking place across the globe. And as a consequence of that, fundamentally how we how we practice as international tax practitioners has changed. We spend a lot of time talking about modeling and the various tools that we use. And I don't really think that's frankly unique to public accounting and tax practice.
No, not at all.
Industry is going through a major transformation.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to get a little bit of your insight, and particularly for clients and taxpayers that are listening, amongst other business people, really, how have you approached leading an organization the size that we have through the transformation that we're going through?
Yeah.
And as I've thought about our international tax practice, I've been very focused on, do we have the appropriate technology tools? What are we doing with our people and our people strategy? And how fundamentally do we train our people differently, and with this constant just flow of information?
Right.
And so I thought maybe we would start with technology, because I know that's something near and dear to your heart and something that we've worked a lot together on, really transforming our business from a technology perspective.
Yes.
And so how have you thought about that as we think about our organization and our tax practice as a whole, and as others think about transforming their respective businesses? How have you really gone about thinking about the transformational change that we're going through?
So Doug, first of all, it's a great question. And if you're inside an organization that's not thinking about transformation, or in the middle of transformation, or on the back end of your own transformation, then you have to wonder, where are you? We are no different than anyone else. I think the first thing when I think about transformation and technology and how you think about data differently, I like to step outside of our organization, as you know, and I like to look around the world, look at world-class organizations wherever they might be, whatever industry they might be in, and learn. And so that's what we've done. Fortunately for us, at this time in our careers, at this time in our lives, there are some really great examples of organizations that have transformed, or organizations that have been created around this notion of technology, data, along with core fundamental needs of their client base, and they've been disruptive.
Right.
So I first start with this notion of, how do I disrupt myself? How do we disrupt how we've done business? So as you know, we're a 170-year-old organization.
Right.
There are a lot of things that we've learned, habits that we've developed. And in the past, you learn those, you apply those, and you're successful. Well, now we're creating a whole new set of habits. Technology is at the core of that. I believe that in a professional services organization, the best thing you can do is leverage the talent you have to transform. And so what that has meant for us is what we call a citizen-led approach. So there are some core technologies, user-friendly, off-the-shelf technologies, that when you couple those with tax technical experts, in our case, that understand the nuances of the law and the challenges that clients have in applying the law and understanding it in their fact pattern, it's a very powerful combination. And so I think one of the first things that has been really successful for us is combining our people. And you've heard me say, right, technology is about making the human the hero.
Absolutely.
So it's combining our people and their skills and enhancing those skills around certain technology platforms and saying, let's go solve problems for our clients in a different way, in a more efficient, effective way. That's been incredibly successful. In parallel with that, you have large enterprise-wide technology. When you think about some of the stuff you guys have done with Beacon and some of the other tools, those are tools that require extensive investment. So when I think about technology and I think about the enterprise-wide side, I think budget.
Absolutely, because you need to have the infrastructure.
You need,
and you gotta
absolutely.
spend.
You can't have just one foot in. You need to have the infrastructure. You need to have the budget. You need to have the patience and the ability to withstand pivots, to appreciate that everything's not going to be perfect. The last piece of that, just in that core technology bill, that you add to the citizen-led, leveraging what I'll call innovation, small I innovation, with enterprise-wide platforms and technology, is this notion to co-develop with clients. Mm-hmm. And so building a suite of technology internally amongst yourselves is not the smartest approach. And so when you combine willingness to invest, which means having some of the best talent to code and to build and the infrastructure, with this notion of co-developing with clients around their real needs, it's a very powerful combination.
Yeah, so let's unpack a couple of those things, because we're obviously a huge organization, and I think about even some of our clients with maybe smaller tax departments. But one of the things that I really, I've tried to spend a lot of time, particularly the international tax services practice. You talk about citizen-led, and really, I think of it as just empowering people within your teams, within your organizations, to try to identify new ways to do things.
That's right.
Right. And so it doesn't necessarily, and then we figure out how to scale it, right?
That's right.
Because our business is so big, and
right.
we spend a lot of time trying to figure out, well, how do we incentivize those people, first of all, to come up with that new process or whatever it is, or a bot. And then we got to figure out how to scale it. But even if you have a tax department of 10 people, trying to figure out how to encourage those people to look for new ways to do things is challenging. And I think, all of us kind of have the ways that we were taught. And I mean, just think about how much has changed, since we went to college.
That's
I
right.
mean, I didn't even have a laptop in my accounting program. We're relatively young guys.
That's true.
Relatively
speaking.
Relatively speaking. I'm not sure the entire audience that are listening to the podcast and my vlogs are necessarily would agree with that.
Yeah.
But just really how much has changed and how open-minded particularly some people are, and really trying to encourage them to come up with new ways of doing things is really important.
So you hit on it, and it's actually not about age, candidly. It's about curiosity. And if there's a slogan that I would leave you with, is you have to have the mindset of there has to be a way. There has to be a way. There has to be a way to process data in a more efficient and effective manner. There has to be a way to have this tax return data tell us more about our business. There has to be a way to process and model out what-if scenarios to deal with the uncertainty. There has to be a way. And so if you're sitting in a 10-person tax department, then maybe it's not you go out and buy and build. Maybe it's finding, who do I partner with? Right? Who do I go out? Are there third-party software that I can leverage? Are there organizations like ours that understands my footprint, understands the landscape, and have decided it was a smart endeavor to invest millions and millions, I would say hundreds of millions actually, into technology? How do you parlay what someone else has done? I think there are lots of opportunities for small and large organizations to answer the question of, there's got to be a way. How do I find it?
Right. And then once you come up with that way, right, then one of the things that I've been spending a lot of time on, and I know you've given the analogy of our technology transformation of crossing the lake, right?
Yes.
And we'd like to think we're well halfway across the lake.
Absolutely.
But I actually used the analogy today with my team that well, we're more than halfway there, but if we get off the boat now, we're still going to get wet, right?
That's right.
We still got a little ways. We got a little ways to go.
That's right.
But we're getting there, and I think one of the challenges is as you find whether it's the citizen-led tools or enterprise type tools with an organization is trying to encourage adoption.
Yes.
Right, and trying to figure out how to incentivize, motivate people to actually use these new tools and come up with different ways to do things that they've been taught, different than how they've been taught.
Yes.
And so, how do you think about that, particularly from the scale? Like,
yes.
Because I've been really, challenged with that too, of just because people are just used to doing things like certain ways.
The comfort zone.
What actually has helped, like with tax reform, it's kind of forced people to do things differently.
Yes.
Right. Because now the rules, particularly in international tax, are so insanely complex. Like the historical way to do modeling, it's just like you need to come up with new ways. So that's kind of forced people out of their comfort zone, but that's not always the case.
So first of all, it's a great question. And it's a question that if you just go at this thinking it's all about technology, you'll miss the boat. Right. And you'll miss what you just described, which is the human element. And it's really all about the human element, because you can have the best technology in the world. If the team doesn't adopt the technology and use it and innovate around it and continue to be curious and expand it, it's just it's like a car parked in a garage. Like, that's great. You can look at it, but you're not getting the enjoyment of what a car was designed to do. And so for me, the answer is almost the same whether you're a 12,000 person organization such as ours or you're a 10-person tax department. It starts with the human. What do I mean by that? First of all, you need to know what motivates your people. Like, you need to take the time to understand what are the things that they're concerned about, what are the things that excite them, what are the things that motivate them. Let's go to the concern first. So it is no secret that the average professional is concerned about technology taking over parts of their job. Mm-hmm. Like, what will I do? If the bot does this work, what will I do? And I think meeting that head on and co-creating what the new world looks like is very, very important. And obviously, you could do a whole podcast just on that topic right there. Yeah. So I'll keep moving. That is incredibly important. And understanding that the trust level between, I trust you, I'm going to lean in, I'm going to co-create, I'm going to innovate, I'm going to build this bot, and I'm going to trust you that you're not going to ask me to either go do something I can't do or leave the organization, is something as a leader you have to make sure you're focused on. The second piece of that is really delving into, well, what are the things that we'd like to do as an organization that we don't have time to do? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key, really helping people find that space. And then as we say inside our organization, no one will be left behind. Like, really letting it be known, no one's going to be left behind unless you want to be left behind. And quite frankly, you will find some people who do. I think once you cross that hurdle and you are co-creating with them in terms of these solutions, we talked about the citizen-led piece, you start to open up a whole new world for people. The last piece of that is habits. We talked this week about habits and the power of 1% change and aggregated marginal gains. Boiling the ocean and completely transforming your organization overnight is just not going to happen. Right. You need the patience. You need to appreciate you're going to have to iterate. There will be days when you take 2 or 3 steps forward and a couple of steps back, right? And that's progress.
It is.
Momentum in this area with professionals, it sometimes will start off slow, and there will be times when it feels like it's not moving at all, and then all of a sudden it will catch on like wildfire. I use the analogy of battery-operated cars.
Sure.
It's sort of like it was like this thing that people were talking about, and then all of a sudden they're making profit, right? And all of a sudden people are really buying, and you miss the moment where it was an interesting, thing that everyone was sort of reading about. No one was interested in buying, to everyone's got one. Like, when did that happen?
Right.
And so my point to leaders around people and automation and technology is, be patient, be human, be encouraged, and keep your eyes open because it can happen really quick.
I love it. And it's what I've been telling my teams too is just there's like this stick-to-itiveness, right?
Yeah.
Of just like, you got to just keep with the message. You got to keep reminding people. Change is hard.
Yes.
Right. And then the other thing is like, we'll come up with, if there's a new process, a new tool, whatever the case may be, well, whatever individual came up with that, he or she understands how that works. And then all of a sudden, that can save a whole bunch of time or be a lot easier going forward. But then when you try to train somebody on it, it's different than what they've done.
Yes.
Right. And then it takes longer the first time.
That's right.
And trying to encourage people and to remind them that, yes, there's a term for that. It's called the learning curve.
Right. It's not a new term.
It's not a new term. This has been going on presumably since
Right.
the invention of the wheel, I would guess. And how do we use that?
Right.
Right. And so, but like making sure that people understand, that this is going to be different. It may take a little bit more time on the front end, but just trying to do what you can to encourage those teams, those peoples, those human beings,
Yes.
and incentivizing them through, a variety of different ways to move past, to get through that learning curve into those efficiencies.
Yeah. Can I just add one other quick piece to that?
Please.
So, we talk about getting comfortable being uncomfortable. I mean, clearly in this space of change, there will be times when you just will be uncomfortable. And practically speaking, how does that show up? Well, if I've reviewed data, if I've reviewed information, a tax perspective in one way, using technology to do that, I may not be comfortable with that.
Right.
The answer should be the same.
Right.
And quality never takes a backseat to anything.
Right.
Definitely not technology. But understanding that you can actually get to the same result just a different way is something that sounds simple when I say it, but it's something that's very impactful from a psychological perspective. The last thing I want to say is there is this idea of change management, transformation stress.
Mm-hmm.
That I think big organizations and even small organizations sometimes overlook. Right, so you have your change calendar and you have your analysis and you have your rollout plan and your Lean Six Sigma person's there and it's all plugged up and ready to go. And what you're missing is the psychological impact of layering on change. Everything we just talked about, plus. When you introduce high performers who want to get it right, who want to understand how things work the first time, who are used to being on top of their game in every element, when you introduce this notion of technology and automation and dashboards and new ways to look at things, you're disrupting their psyche a bit.
Right.
And so I think as a leader, whether what I'm saying to you sounds soft and something that's not, anything you care about, I would encourage you to do a little research, to think about what I'm saying, because it is a real factor and it will either advance the speed of change or inhibit your change. And so I just encourage you to think about that. That's something that we're thinking about a lot more. And so anyway, I just wanted to add that to the
No, I think it's
section.
a great point. And then, layer the technology change that we're having to deal with all of the change within the tax profession.
That's right.
These international tax rules. And, as I go and talk to our clients and talk to people in the industry, it's like, man, the change, it's just constant change just from a tax law perspective.
That's right.
And it's not unique to the U.S.
That's
too, right? We've got the anti-tax avoidance directive we've talked about, and now BEPS 2.0. It's like Callum Dewar was on, and BEPS 1.0 hasn't even been hasn't even been enacted yet.
Digital tax
And
popping up everywhere.
They've already called it a failure. We're on to BEPS 2.0. The digital tax is just change.
Yes,
But
yes,
it's really you have to embrace it.
Yeah.
And because it's not going to stop.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, is a perfect transition to a second topic. And one of the things I'm very passionate about is our recruiting process. And I spend a lot of time talking to people just entering into the profession and professors at accounting programs and law schools across the country. Yeah. And with all this discussion that we have about technology, we get a lot of questions like, well, are people still going to have jobs?
Right.
Are we still going to need people? Are we going to come up with a robot that can, just do all the tax advice that we do?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think has been interesting for me, particularly running our international tax services business, is as we come up with ways to automate, and as we, take hours out of the system, which is obviously the way we think about things in a professional services environment, tax laws keep changing. We keep finding things for people to do.
Oh, yeah.
And what I try to do and what I tell our people is and with the tools that I'm focusing on are, let's try to take some of those tasks off of people's plates that really aren't the reason that a lot of us went to accounting schools or law school or computer science, and, trying to automate a lot of the administrative type tasks, and so that we can focus on more value creation. We can be more thoughtful. We can spend more time focusing on tax technical stuff. And so as long as the tax laws continue to change, and I think they will, there's a huge opportunity for us in the industry. But what's your reaction to that?
So first, let me go outside our industry for a moment, and I'll bring it back. So since the beginning of time, things change. They've evolved. You can go back industrially. I mean, you can go back as far as you want, right? And what you see is mankind evolve. We find new creative things to do. We find problems that existed that we can focus on that we never knew existed, and we never had the time to focus on. And that's no different. It's no different now. Now, the speed of change and the power of computing and innovation seems like it makes it a more daunting time. But the truth of the matter is, the approach, the process is the same. Mm-hmm. There are so many things. I'll bring it inside our industry. There are so many things that we can do for our clients. When you think about the uncertainty and you think about modeling out uncertainty, for example, there are so many elements to that analysis that we can bring to the table if we have time to think, if we have time to understand, to ask questions. Our ability to add value is not in the mundane routine. Mm-hmm. Our ability to add value is to create capacity so we can basically bring all the training to bear and continue to learn and co-create with our clients. I spend very little time worried, will we have jobs for people? Yeah. I said yesterday on stage, we're over the next 5 to 10 years, we're gonna need more people, a lot more people. Now, they'll be doing different things. Right. They will, this notion of a tax technologist will exist. Yes. Right. So how do you think about your vocation in terms of your expertise of understanding the law and interpreting the law? I'll come back to that in a moment. Mm-hmm. With bringing that to life for a client in a dynamic way through visualization. Do you spend tons of time grappling with the data, or do you use the technology to allow you to assess the data, assimilate the data, and get on to the more valuable things of what does it mean and what are we going to do with it and how does it apply to your business? I'm super excited about the fact that in the world of tax, we need to understand the most granular level of data. We need to understand the legal structure at the most finite level. Mm-hmm. Our ability to help the overall business enterprise beyond our function is right in front of us. And so while I won't speak for all that are going through this evolution of innovation, I will speak for the tax experts. The attributes and the capabilities that we apply to do what we do every day, and the ability to take the most granular level of insight into our organization and turn that into something that the CEO, CFO, and business unit leaders can leverage as they go drive their business is untouched. Oh, yeah. It's untouched. And we're the ones to move that, whether you're in a 10-person tax department or whether you're in a 12,000-person organization such as ours. So will it take courage? Will it take the ability to get comfortable being uncomfortable? Will it take stepping out of our box, our tax box, with what we know? Yes. But as we look for opportunities to expand what people do, they're right in front of us. Right. And so let's talk a little bit about those skill sets, because you mentioned a lot of the different skill sets that are now needed as we look at whether it's experienced hires, young people, what we're asking of our partners. I think back in the day, and which isn't that long ago, that just the pure tax technical skills were just
were the most important. Some would
Yeah.
say that was the only thing
Right.
that was important,
Right.
right? Could you
Right.
analyze the rules?
Right.
Do you understand how these things...
Memorize sections.
Yeah,
and-
memorizing
yeah,
code
yeah.
sections, and then being able to apply that
Absolutely.
creatively to be able to
Absolutely.
create, as you had mentioned, with
Absolutely.
the C-suite, value-added propositions for deal structuring, or whatever the case might be. And as I think about just how my job has changed and within our international tax practice, boy, I've spent a lot of time learning about like technology stuff,
Yeah.
right? And like
Yeah.
there was no like technology class when I did the accounting program
Right.
in the early 90s.
Right. Right.
You know, and so there is kind of a fundamental shift into you still need to know the rules, right?
Yes.
We're tax
Oh, yeah,
advisors,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so
Yeah.
you still
There's no
have
question about
you
that.
still
Yeah.
have to do that, but
Yeah.
then there are these other skills that you also need, and some of our things like some hard skills, which is, you know, coding and different, you know,
Yeah, that's
actual
right.
technology
That's right.
stuff, which is way outside my area of expertise. But,
Yeah.
you know, I've got a tax technology team. I've had to learn how to talk to those guys.
That's right. That's
Because when I first started, there was no communication, very little communication. But
Right, right.
They were like, read this, read this, read this. Okay, now I start to get it. And I've had to upskill myself.
Right. That's right.
And then there are the soft skills too, of just being able to accept change, being able to motivate people if you're a team leader, to be able to try to encourage people to do things differently.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, you laid it out very well. And some of your listeners may say, wow, that's daunting. Like how do I take all that on? I would ask you to take it into pieces, break it into pieces. And it's quite exciting, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say, you know, I have to use additional parts of my brain more regularly than I may have before. Right. You have to be creative. You have to be logical in a lot of ways. You have to be, you know, the notion of the people element and how are you motivating people. So it's an exciting area. It's nothing to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
Candidly, that's just my view. I'll just start by saying that. I think that when you think about training in school, the notion of having law and computer science go together will happen more often. The beauty is some of the tools today allow themselves to be activated pretty easily. Like you could almost watch a YouTube video and activate some of these tools. That's
Right,
great.
yeah.
Right? That's different than it
Right.
used to be, right? The notion of coding and doing the more sophisticated things, we're all open to training our people. You know, we run academies
Right.
and we teach people how to do some of these things. So organizations will have to become part of your repertoire of offerings in terms of L&D to your people. When you think about tax, today, understanding the law, there are easier ways to sort of get an appreciation for what the rules are and how they work than in the past. Candidly, some of the technology and the ability, you know, I was talking to an AI expert and outside the field of tax, and they were flipping through the tax code and they were like, wow, this is awesome. And I'm like, yeah. And he says, no, it's codified. Like it's all logical and it's linked up.
Absolutely.
So you talk to someone who's in the AI world and they look at the law and they're like, wow, this is great. Like I could do some real damage here. Like I could connect some things in a really powerful way. So even the technical capabilities that in yesteryears took years and years and years to acquire, like you're going to be able to become more technical at a deeper level faster, because you're going to have that automation that will help you do that. And so, look, a very, very exciting world. We're here to support our clients in that endeavor. We're on that journey ourselves. You know, we call it Your Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It has a be well, work well element. It has an automation, digitization element. And so we're super excited.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited as well, and it's really just a unbelievable time within our industry, just from the tax law changes, the technical changes. As I think about the future of our profession and the future of tax, I think it's very strong. I think the skill sets, as we described, are going to be different, and we need to think about how we train people differently. Universities need to think about how they're going to train people differently. But I'm very bullish about the profession.
And so I agree. I'll adjust one thing you said. What I've learned is curiosity and innovation has no age attached to
Ooh, I
it.
like that.
We all of our folks contribute in different ways, and I'm always amazed and surprised on both sides. So
That's a perfect way to leave it. Well, Roy Weathers, thanks for joining. So thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Cross-Border Tax Talks. Thanks again to Roy Weathers, PwC's Vice Chair and U.S. Tax Leader. I'm Doug McHoney, PwC's International Tax Services Leader in the U.S. Stay tuned in 2 weeks for another exciting edition of Cross-Border Tax Talks.